You're listening to Airey Bros Radio. Be there or be square, because it's all killer, no filler.
Dave Meltzer has Keith and I cited in one of his books as the beginning of modern wrestling. It changed the way wrestling was covered. It changed what wrestling TV was. We wanted to go in and cover it like an actual sport. Bigger than rock stars, they had to have bodyguards going to the ring too, because girls would try to tear the trunks off, tear their hair out. I mean, I was there during the greatest feud in the history of professional wrestling, the Freebird Von Erich feud. Producer, director of WCW Saturday Night. I feel wrestling, and who feels it knows it. They believed, and that's what made it special. That's what made it incredible, because it was kayfabe. I was a senior producer at the PGA TOUR for 6 years, which was fantastic. To keep kayfabe, I can't explain kayfabe. This is Dan Bynum, and you are listening to Airey Bros Radio. It's David teaming with the Freebirds before they turned heel.
Okay.
So that's, I just pulled it up to look at it, but so that's kind of interesting. I can run it back and start it.
So
I directed it, but the directing's not that great at the beginning. So
how old were you there when you directed that?
That was 82, so I was 28.
28.
Was I that old? Shit, 82.
Had you worked in television prior to that?
Yeah, I started out in industrial TV at Texas Instruments and worked in the media center there. And then I wanted to get into broadcast, so I just walked into Channel 39 and applied, and the lady that was the general manager at the time saw me, and I spoke to her right then, and she liked me, so I got a great opportunity to come in and just get in the production department. And so my first job was camera assistant. We had a TV truck, so every weekend we would be subbed out to ESPN or whoever, and we do different sports. And so the first job that I got with them, we went out to the Mesquite Rodeo, and I was the camera assistant for the cameraman who was behind the chutes where the bulls and the Broncos came out. And so my first job was literally hauling camera cable through manure. And that stuff was nasty. It would bleach your jeans if you got it on you. So that's how it started. And ironically, the cameraman was Keith Mitchell,
Okay.
who became the producer of WCCW, who then was hired by Ted Turner to become the director of production of WCW, who hired me to go to Atlanta and be the producer director of WCW Saturday Night, which I did for 6 years there. So that was interesting that it all began with me and him running camera back then. So
Was the rodeo, did you go right from the rodeo right to the wrestling? Like shooting?
No, because we did a lot of sports. So we did all of the college sports. So we did football, basketball, baseball, swimming, gymnastics. We did every sport. So we were really good at doing sports live.
Okay.
And so Fritz then wanted a syndicated show, and Mickey Grant, the director of production at Channel 39, knew Bill Mercer from when they worked in radio, and Bill Mercer was involved in the wrestling. So he put the thing together with Fritz. And so we were going to do a live show out of the Sportatorium. And then back then, wrestling was a 2-camera shoot. Okay. It didn't have the production values that it did after us. And so what it was 2 hard cameras, a wide shot and a slightly tighter shot, and the guys would walk over the camera to do their promos. And so we were going into the Sportatorium, which is the mecca of professional wrestling. And it was my first exposure to professional wrestling, and it's what blew my mind and made me want to do it and love it. Because when we went in there the first time just to check it out at one of their events, I realized that all of these fans, there are 2,500 fans in there, packed in there, and all of them were able to completely suspend their disbelief, and they were completely committed to it. So much so, we had to have bodyguards to escort the heels, especially, in and out of the ring, lest they get stabbed or have a bottle smashed over them or anything like that, because people hated the heels because they believed, and that's what made it special. That's what made it incredible, because it was kayfabe days, so the heels and the baby faces entered on the opposite sides of the building, and if they were in character, they came in character, they left in character, they were never seen in public fraternizing between baby faces and heels. They were totally committed to it, man. And so when I saw that, we wanted to go in and cover it like a actual sport, because that's what we did, so we came in with handheld cameras down by the ring, and we mic'd the ring itself, so we were getting a lot of audio that had never been heard before. Too much audio sometimes. We had to be careful about that, but still, because people never saw a shot like this in wrestling ever before, and so yeah, they're totally into it, man. So when the fans got a hold of this, they went nuts, and it was syndicated around the world, world-class championship wrestling, and it changed the way wrestling was covered. It changed what wrestling TV was. And Dave Meltzer has Keith and I cited in one of his books as the beginning of modern wrestling, this show. So it was just luck on my part. I was in the right place at the right time. I was developing a skill set, but I thought I could do it. And more importantly, I love this. And I still love real wrestling. This is real wrestling. Because I believe it, and what we have now, we don't have real wrestling anymore. What we have now is not even wrestling to me.
I know you mentioned real wrestling. I'm more of a folk style, freestyle, Olympic wrestling. I'm actually a high school wrestling coach right now. So Jimmy talks to me a lot about this stuff. Sometimes I pay attention to it, sometimes I don't. So I know some of the terminology. So I apologize ahead of time if I ask you some basic questions, but it's also for some of our audience that may not necessarily be as into professional wrestling as Jimmy is.
Well, and it's interesting that you would be here, because for me, real wrestling has to be rooted in classic wrestling. Mm-hmm. It has to be grappling. It has to be, the referee has to have control over everything. There's got to be, you're disqualified if you cheat. I mean, as far as I'm concerned. So what we have now is just a shadow of what I believe real wrestling is, what it can be and should be. So, but I'm just one guy, and I mean, there may be others out there that feel this way, but the thing about it is, back when, a little bit after this, when I was at WCW in Atlanta, each of the shows that were on Monday nights opposite each other, each show had twice as many viewers as WWE has now. And each show had 5 times as many viewers as AEW has now. So the number, just the hard number of people actually wanting to watch wrestling has halved or more been cut off, because people want this. They want this. And the silly stuff is what I guess smart fans like, and so the whole smartness of it all, just, for me, it ruins the whole thing, because this was kayfabe. Everybody was able to suspend their disbelief. We all believe this was real. It looks real to me. As far as I'm concerned, that's real wrestling. And if you've got the people in the ring actually saying it's not real wrestling, actually disrespecting the art of professional wrestling by all of this silly crap, then that diminishes the impact of the thing. And the whole point of it, to me, is to be able to suspend your disbelief. Because when I go see Shakespeare, I'm not going to be going over the minutia of guys' costumes or the pace that they're, I'm going to believe that guy is King Lear or whoever, And that's the way wrestling, I believe, should be enjoyed. But it's impossible to now, because nobody is doing any real wrestling. So,
Dan, what are your thoughts on the current NWA products? Does that whet your palate at all?
That's more like it. That's definitely more like it. So,
curious on if you like their current product, because they definitely bring that old studio feel.
That's what I liked. And I liked Ring of Honor all the way up until they got bought and done away with, basically. So if Tony was smart, he would bring that brand back that way, with real wrestling, in my opinion. The hardcore stuff that we were doing back then, some of it was silly, but mostly it was intense and it was stiff. So if it's stiff enough, it's real. So yeah, that would be a great brand, an offshoot brand, but who knows?
So Dan, how did you come to find professional wrestling? How did you get into it, and how did that lead you to having the ability to have a career and work in it?
Well, when I was a kid, I was into roller derby. So that was my thing when I was a little kid, was roller derby. So it's because I was out in East Texas, couldn't get the wrestling TV or whatever. But so when I went to the Sportatorium for the first time, that was really my first intimate relationship with wrestling. And when I went into the Sportatorium and saw what was going on there, it blew my mind, because it was so special. This subcult, the energy was incredible. And the way the boys worked back then was incredibly stiff. It was real. So I was lucky when I was there. Playboy Gary Hart was there. And when we first started working with them, they were kayfabing us totally, you know, and so we wouldn't really know anything that was going on. Eventually, though, I was able to convince Gary that I believed in kayfabe and could be trusted, and as did Keith. And so then we started getting, you know, some understanding of what was going on. But that's as far as I'll go with that. But thank God for Gary, because Gary enabled me to get over with the boys, and that made all of the stuff that we did possible, them trusting us to do the features that we did, and just becoming friends with them. You know, my friendship with Michael Hayes, with whom I did the historic Bad Street USA video, and the matches that I did I was there during the greatest feud in the history of professional wrestling, the Freebird Von Erich feud. It was spectacular. It had so much heat, it was unbelievable. The boys were over like gods in Texas. And so it was just the best of all possible times. And that's how I got into it. But once I saw what it was, I loved it. And I wanted to be able to make product that would be easier for people to suspend their disbelief around. And I think that's what we did, because we covered it with respect as a serious sport, like it is when it's real wrestling. And because of that, it just enabled fans to really get into it. And it was so huge around the world. And, you know, until Vince broke kayfabe and began the demise of the business, it was incredible.
So you mentioned the Sportatorium, you mentioned the boys being rock stars in Texas, and I really don't think people understand how big they were. They had was it the Rose Bowl where was it David? It wasn't David. It was Kerry who won it at the Rose Bowl, right?
Well,
no,
you're talking about Texas Stadium.
Texas Stadium, yeah, they had Texas Stadium for matches. I just kind of go into how big they were over in Israel and in Texas, and how much there it is right there, Texas Stadium.
50,000 people in Texas Stadium. This was the David Von Erich Memorial. And and that's another thing. I got to work with Ric Flair. And Ric Flair is the greatest of all time. He's thankfully still a friend of mine. I was just in Nashville at his final match and was honored to be a guest there. But yeah, this was one of the iconic matches of all time, this one right here. And yep, Kerry won the strap. And it was one of the biggest days of my life, because that night we went from Texas Stadium after this incredible, successful event and drove over to a video bar in North Dallas and had the premiere of Bad Street USA that same day, May 6th, 1984. One of the greatest days of my life. But they were so over, bigger than rock stars. They had to have bodyguards going to the ring too, because girls would they would try to tear the trunks off, tear their hair out. They were nuts. So you can't understand the level of intensity that the kayfabe years had, because we all believed, and it was real. So much that's been lost of that intensity now. And I think if I have to do it myself, I think it can be done again. And there are some guys that I believe are real wrestlers still. So who knows? This could be the year of the real wrestling returns. We'll see.
So Dan, I have two questions. You've said it a few times in here, and I know Jimmy has schooled me on what this is, but could you, for the fans, go into a little bit more about what kayfabe means, where it originates from? And then I'd also like to hear your thoughts on who some of those modern day real wrestlers are.
If I explain, I'm breaking kayfabe. So
okay. See, that's how much of a noob I am.
Well,
it's like a Freemason over here.
and there's the rub, and so that's where I am caught in the middle, because as far as I'm concerned, from here on out, I'm not breaking kayfabe again, and I'm only any wrestling that I do is going to be real wrestling. I'm telling you. So to keep kayfabe, I can't explain kayfabe.
Okay, I respect that. Thank you.
Certainly not on camera. But, it's got to come back. So it's got to start somewhere. So I'm starting it now.
And with what guys are you thinking of? Got any?
Well, there is one guy that I think could and should be the real world champion. And the reason I think that is he was a college champion. And so he is a real wrestler. And I've worked with him at Ring of Honor. And so my thought right now is I want to I'll have to think about if I'm going to do that right now. There's something coming, but this may not be the exact time to do it.
All right. So back to the Sportatorium, back to that Bad Street USA video, one of the biggest days of your life. And I don't think the audience knows, and I don't know if Rich knows, but I believe that was like rock and wrestling. Obviously, Vince McMahon is known for that, but I believe the Bad Street USA video was the first wrestling music video. And you mentioned the multicam and how you guys kind of changed that up, and how that stuff was done in WCCW, and how kind of Vince kind of saw what you guys were doing and made it worldwide.
Well, we made it worldwide. And we were the first ones that started using rock music for entrances. Memphis was doing it the same time, but we started using rock music to do features, character building features around people. Bang Your Head for The Missing Link, and She Works Hard for the Money for Sunshine, and stuff like that. So there was a guy that was a friend of ours, a friend of the Freebirds, that was his dad was a famous jazz musician and talent booker out of Dallas, and he was a composer. He was writing music, so he had an idea for a custom music entrance for the Freebirds. And so he wrote Bad Street USA. His name's Jimmy Papa. He's a great drummer and a record producer. And there he is. That's from I was inducted into the Southern Wrestling Hall of Fame back in March, and he was there for that.
Congratulations.
But so he wrote the music, and they started using that as their entrance. And so it was just the beginning of MTV, and music video was everything. And so we decided we were going to do a music video. There was some money raised to do the production of it, independent of the TV station, and then we used the TV station edit suite to edit it. And it was my first experience shooting film, and but it was an insane production schedule. We shot in the Sportatorium on Friday nights. And so Friday we had a shoot, and then Friday night after that, we had an event at a punk bar to find punks to be in the video the next day. So we were up doing that late at night, and then we got there. We had to be at the film studios at Las Colinas very early in the morning, and we shot the concert footage, the performance footage at the studios there all morning. And then we moved down to our Bad Street set, which was a old black neighborhood just north of downtown Dallas. And it was 2 weeks away from being all demolished so that large skyscrapers could be built there or whatever. And so it was the perfect set for Bad Street. And so we shot there all night and got it.
So talking about the Freebirds, and you were talking about the Freebirds actually teaming with the Von Erichs, and then we were talking about the Turn and how big that was, and how much the boys were like rock stars. And so much so there's a movie coming out about the Von Erichs. I'm not sure if you heard about that.
Oh yeah.
And
oh yeah.
I'm kind of curious because, you know, there's been the dark side of the ring and everyone knows the story. I'm just kind of curious to your take on the Von Erich story and what it was like to live in that as all that tragedy was going on, working for the territory when it was at peak, and then kind of watching it, what went down. Did it feel like there was a dark cloud over the family? Was it like you were just waiting for bad news to happen, and when it was coming down the pike?
Yeah, losing David was a shock. And that changed everything, because David was the mature one. He was the leader. He would have been the world champion, and they would have been able to carry on. So when David left, things got sideways. The boys were in over their heads. Fritz was nuts, etc. But right here, right now, this was the beginning of the greatest time ever. Because after this turn, the territory was just on fire. People were so shocked about this. But yeah, then it was incredible. Then it was through the roof. The TV was through the roof. Everybody wanted to see the TV. Everybody wanted to syndicate the TV. It was syndicated in the Middle East. And the story is, during the time that wrestling was on, there wouldn't be any Palestinian, Israeli crossfire because everybody was watching wrestling. So that was how hot it was back then. And Fritz just couldn't see the way to take it nationwide like Vince did. And Vince couldn't see the power of pay-per-view. for the big events rather than keeping them so that the gate would be big. And we tried to get him to see it, but he didn't, and so he got left behind. But the dissolution of his family was the most powerful part of the demise of WCCW. So yeah, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking to lose David because he was the one that I was closest to. He was most accessible for me, and I loved him, man. That the time we went out and shot at his ranch with Jimmy and Sunshine and that incredible feature, it's just magic for me to be able to remember that stuff. But yeah, it was heartbreaking. And then there was just too much pressure on the other guys. They couldn't handle Fritz's expectations. So, I mean, it's Shakespearean. So I'll be interested to see how the movie treats it. But yeah, it was brutal to be a part of it. I actually had left the TV show shortly after Bad Street came out, probably in the summer of '84. I got hired away by a music video production company. And I went to work for them. We produced a video for Devo and et cetera, et cetera. But eventually I was pulled back into the business by Keith when Ted bought David Crockett Productions and brought the production in-house for World Championship Wrestling in Atlanta. And so then they hired me to go produce the Saturday night show, and I was there for 6 years. And every show I produced, every 2-hour Saturday night show, it was always the highest rated show on TBS that week, every week for 6 years. So we were still pretty powerful. Corporate wrestling was silly at WCW, so that was an issue. And I loved being there until Terry Bollea came. He's literally the worst human being I've ever met. So I couldn't stand to work with him, and he literally drove me out of wrestling that time. So I landed on my feet. I went to work for the PGA Tour. I was a senior producer at the PGA Tour for 6 years, which was fantastic. And then after a while, we moved to Denver, where we are now. And I did golf marketing for a while. And but then Ring of Honor called. Jim Cornette and Gary Juster called me up and asked me if I wanted to come and be the director of production for Ring of Honor and create all of that for Sinclair Broadcast. So I was really blessed to be able to do that, and did that for 3 years. That was difficult. I had to fly to Baltimore and be there 10 days a month. Did that for 3 years. But it was fantastic to work with those guys. That dressing room was incredible, and their work was stiff as hell. So I was proud of what we were doing there. and it was fantastic. Eventually, they wanted me to move to Baltimore, and I didn't want to leave Denver. I'm a snowboarder. I'm not going to move to Baltimore. Come on. Then later, I did a year with Court Bauer in Major League Wrestling, and that was a lot of fun too. I like what he's doing a lot. He's bringing all of the genres together, and that to me is interesting booking. So I like what they do. Currently, just looking for the real wrestling. And I tell you what, I will tell you who I think is the real world champion. He is a guy that I worked at Ring of Honor with, and got to know really well, and I love him a lot. And his name's Charlie Haas, and he is a guy that is steeped in Greco-Roman wrestling. He was a college champion, and so maybe I will make the Real Wrestling Federation and make him the world champion, and then people can come and see what real wrestling's about. Come and try to beat us.
If you need an assistant producer, holler at your boy.
Well, there you go. There you go. You got to think it. You got to think it for it to come into action. So I'm thinking it right now. I'm thinking it.
You're going to manifest it.
Yep.
Is there a particular aspect of the production and the production value and quality of wrestling that you enjoy the most?
I like the live directing. So, and of course, that's a product of hours and hours and hours of pre-production so that you can pull it off. So all of that is part of it too. But the live directing and the working with great cameramen and telling the story that they're telling in the ring, that's the ultimate to me. So, it's like people say, boy, there's a lot of pressure there, and for me now, it's like it's where I'm comfortable. It's like you're sitting in a TV truck and everybody's yelling around you, and craziness is going on in the ring, but I feel like I'm in the eye of the hurricane, and everything's calm in there, and I'm just looking for the next best shot. So that really is the most fun to me, is the live production of it. But as I say, the most important part of pulling off live production is just doing meticulous pre-production, so that you know what's going to happen before it happens. Not in the ring. I'm not talking about in the ring. I'm talking about rolling in things and all of your bits of bumpers and stuff like that. You got all of that totally laid out, so it's easy.
Is there when you do live television, is it harder to do, say, professional wrestling opposed to another sport, because you have to be aware of what's going on, if someone's going to draw blood or something like that? Not that they do that, because we're keeping kayfabe.
Right.
If something like that was going on, you would have to know where the camera was, or if they were letting them, in the headlock, you would want to have the camera on a certain thing. So would that make doing professional wrestling harder than doing other sports where you don't have to look out for those things?
Well, like each sport, it's an acquired skill. Guys that do, 50 baseball games a year are really good at it, and so me doing wrestling and loving wrestling and being able to feel the flow of what's happening, and wrestling's easier than for me, because I know wrestling, and I feel wrestling, and who feels it knows it. So And I would have to get up to speed to do basketball again. I mean, it's just one camera mostly, but and like hockey, et cetera, stuff like that. But there's a rhythm to all of it. And but yeah, wrestling is more like rock and roll.
Do you have a preference on the amount of cameras you have?
More is better. More is better. You got to have at least 4, because you got to have 2 fixed cameras, a wide and a tighter fixed camera. And then you've got to have at least 2 on the floor next to the ring. And then if you could have another one down there, that would be good. And then there are specialty cameras like backstage stuff, et cetera, depending upon how deep you want to get into stuff like that. I mean, one of the pay-per-views I did at WCW, we had 16 cameras, I think. And so, but a lot of them were specialty cameras for one-offs, for things that happened like outside the building, in the next door, in the cattle barn, where they were actually wrestling in dung in Cedar Rapids, stuff like that. Man. But yeah, more is better. And obviously, more money, more cameras, because they've got all the cameras they need for SmackDown and Raw. And they're enhanced whatever events, not pay-per-views, but whatever they are. Those are, I mean, they spend more than $1 million on production, I'm pretty sure.
Well, I think that's an important question I have for you. As a guy who loves old school professional wrestling, I know you don't like the product in the ring, but does their product, as far as their production value, does that impress you? Do you like that? Because I might not necessarily like all that WWE does, but as someone who wants to get in the industry, I watch just to see what they're doing, because it's so crisp. And I don't even think the NFL does as good a job as WWE does, but that's my opinion.
No, it's state of the art, and to be at these live events is also incredible. It's different, but nobody does entrances like them, and that's the best part of some of their matches. You know, I mean, when the Undertaker
the whole match
takes 20 minutes to get down there, but it's incredible. You know, the gravitas of that. And I was at SummerSlam, and which was a little bit less on the entrance side because of the way they had to have it set up, but it's just the big time production values, and that is fantastic. If I could believe what was happening in the ring, and some of it I can, like for SummerSlam, I am a huge Becky Lynch fan. I believe Becky Lynch, and the match that she and Bianca had was stiff as hell. It was incredible. I mean, unfortunately, Bianca dropped her on her shoulder, and she had this terrible dislocated shoulder after that. She fought all the way through that, did the babyface turn afterwards to come and help Bianca against the baddies, you know, whoever they are, etc. That was fantastic. That was fantastic. But if you're bringing a fucking backloader in and lifting the ring up and all of that, I mean, come on. So there were parts of it I liked and parts of it I hated. But yeah, WWE, their entrances are state of the art. They have been the pioneers in all of the technological advances. the floating graphics that they use now that aren't really there if you're there live, but it looks like there's floating right there in the venue. All of that is fantastic, and it's all budget driven. I mean, you're as good as your budget lets you be, and some people have all the budget they need and they're still not good, but at least you have a shot at it if you got a big budget. But we did it low budget at Ring of Honor, and it showed a lot, unfortunately, but the work prevailed anyway. So what the boys did in the ring overcame all of our slapdashery. But I mean, we did the best we could. Sinclair was incredibly difficult with budgets, and so we learned how to do it all digitally. We were one of the first productions that we never went to tape ever. It was all digitally recorded. It went directly into the editing systems that way. It was spat out that way. It probably got turned into tape eventually, but we really streamlined the production process for that, and we were doing production on TriCasters, so which is the digital live production system. So we were pioneers in that too, which was a lot of fun. I learned a lot, and that's how I'm able to do the production stuff that I do now. I have a little switcher that I'm using here. And so I go out and produce live shows for events and meetings and stuff like that. And someday I'll produce another wrestling show. But I'm able to do now with the digital equipment that we have, I'm able to do by myself. They used to take a truck and 20 people and miles of cable and all of that. So it's the democratization of the technology.
Do you have a brand that you want to reintroduce, or are you trying to start with when you bring back the real professional wrestling? Are you looking at a new brand name, or do you have something?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's called The Real Wrestling. The Real Wrestling. That's it. The Real Wrestling Federation, TheRealWrestling.com. That's what it is.
Appreciate your knowledge and the inside baseball that you would share with us on the production side of things. It's something that fascinates me and keeps me up, that's something I want to do. So thank you so much. We have 4 rapid fire questions for you that we ask all our guests. So the first question I got for you is, are you a coffee drinker?
Yes, but I can only have one espresso in the morning now. So I love coffee, but I abused it when I was doing overnights and running master controls. And so I have really good coffee, and I do love it, but I have to limit my intake.
Are you putting anything in, or are you taking a jet black?
No, I use vanilla coconut creamer.
Okay.
Because we're vegan at home. It's one of those things, but it whips up really good in the Nespresso whipper. So it makes a great frothy thing. So I'm super spoiled, man.
Yeah, those espresso machines are nice. Are you doing like a small espresso style, or are you doing like a hearty cup of coffee?
No, it's a 7-point-something ounce shot.
Dan, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of yourself?
Yes, I do. I meditate and I chant. I'm into Medicine Buddha is my dharma, and so I chant Medicine Buddha mantra for specific people and for all sentient beings throughout the universe. So those are a couple of the things I do. And I also am a gardener, so I commune with my plant spirits so they can tell me what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. So, and that's a grounding practice too. So those are the things that I do. And I take care of myself. I'm an old guy, but I'm still snowboarding, and I still do live event production, which involves unloading trucks and building stages and trusses and hanging lights and all of that. So staying active is what I do every day to remain functional and the best me.
Very nice. I wasn't expecting some of those with your
No, we could do a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
I'd be glad to do that.
Yeah. So when you say you're gardening, are you doing like plants and flowers? Are you doing like produce and vegetables and stuff? A little bit of everything?
Everything. We do a lot of during the summer I grow tomatoes and peppers and squash, and I have a little plot that I can put stuff in ground, and then I have a lot of pots that I grow stuff in. But I also grow a lot of flowers. I seed wildflowers into pots, and I have a collection of giant dahlias that we grow. So it's a dahlia forest out here, and we also eat greens and tomatoes and peppers and stuff all summer. And I pop up a domed greenhouse, a 12-foot domed greenhouse, and then I have a couple of smaller greenhouses that I overwinter pots in. So I've got tomatoes and collards and stuff growing in the greenhouses even now. And the goal always is to have tomatoes and peppers and greens for Christmas fresh. So that's the goal. Looks like we're going to do it again this year.
Very cool.
And then after that, I start the new stuff out there. So.
Have you ever done any production stuff at Red Rocks?
Yes. And that is a brutal load in, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to load trucks, and then you got to go down the hill and load them into other trucks. So, but it's a great venue. I would love to get on the TV crew there, but that's locked down. So, yeah, I've done a few things. I worked with Humphreys McGee out there on a couple of their live streaming events that they did.
Yeah.
And one of my best friends is John Bell from Widespread Panic. So we're always out there for those 3 shows every year. And it's the greatest venue on earth as far as we're concerned. So we're blessed to have it. An easy drive.
Yeah. So you think it could facilitate a real wrestling event with the layout there, or do you think it's too big? Or
it could be. It could be. Yeah. I mean, it's an amphitheater. I prefer stuff in the round, but what you would want to do, you'd set up the ring down in the orchestra pit, and you'd enter off of the stage, and you'd have your hard cameras set up on the stage shooting out into the crowd, and that would make a great shot. So yeah, actually that would probably work great.
There you go.
Dan, you're the Renaissance man. You got a little bit of everything.
Yep, I've been around for a long time, and I'm still going. That's the great thing about it.
Heck yeah.
Dan, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? You reading anything?
Yeah. Well, I listen to Jim Cornette's podcast to keep abreast of what's real in wrestling, both of his, which takes hours every week. It's ridiculous. And music I'm listening to, some new reggae. The new Red Hot Chili Peppers album is fantastic. I'm a longtime Chili Peppers obsessive. I'm gonna start listening to some Fleetwood Mac now. One of my all-time idols and one of my first musical obsessions, Christine McVie, died today. So I'm going to listen to some old school stuff too, but I keep it fresh. And so my Amazon Prime Music playlist is always being updated. I like lo-fi, and I like classic jazz. I listen to a lot of Miles Davis over and over again because I'm a frustrated trumpet player, and he's like the greatest expression of trumpet playing ever to me. So I listen to a lot of different stuff. We were listening to classical today just to chill it out a little bit. So we run the gamut, and but I like to keep abreast of new stuff too. You know, I love Lizzo and Lotto, and
I got a funny story for you about Lizzo. They I guess she just did Red Rocks, or she was in Denver or something. And I work at a hotel, and her whole crew came and stayed at the hotel, and it was over Halloween, and they all had costumes, and I'm still picking up glitter from the costumes every day. I vacuum, like, oh, Lizzo.
Yeah. Well, I did the Adele show at the Pepsi Center. That's where Lizzo was. And it was a huge show, multi-level orchestra stage that we had to build, but she had confetti, and each confetti had a little message from Adele and Adele's signature on it. And that confetti, we found that confetti. They're probably still finding Adele's confetti in nooks and crannies of the Pepsi Center. But yeah, those big shows are awesome, man. They're fun to work with. I was actually on a stage crew for when WWE came to Pepsi Center one time, which was weird.
What you mentioned new reggae. What new reggae are you listening to?
Protege, John Nine, all of the Marley family, etc. What has been something recent? I can't think of anything now. I'll have to pull up my Prime Music playlist, see what actually I am listening to. But I like to keep it fresh.
All right, I got some new reggae to listen to. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, for sure.
Dan, last but certainly not least, do you have any guilty pleasures?
Well, I don't feel guilt about it because I live in Colorado, but I am a medicinal cannabis user, and I believe that I prove the efficacy of it, and I've seen also more dramatic efficacy of the medicinal value of cannabis. And so I have a very good cannabis doctor here who does research in Israel, who went to Harvard and Oxford, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm one of his subjects, and I'm a snowboarder. So I have slammed my ass into the mountain so much that I've got bursitis in my right hip, and it has been in the past almost debilitatingly painful. And I never wanted to get into the opiates, etc. So when I got to Colorado and we had medicinal cannabis, then I went to Dr. Shackelford and we started working to relieve pain. And by golly, it works, you know. So I use concentrates and I use topicals and some edibles. I'm too reactive to edibles, so they
Not
are
alone.
Yeah.
they're too much for me. So I'm much better burning some flour and
Yeah.
but that's my somewhat guilty pleasure. But I think it's more a nutritional supplement. I fully feel that once we do the scientific study on this, that we're going to find that the endocannabinoid system is incredibly important. I believe that we're going to find out that medicinal cannabis is going to transform healthcare in the world and will change us from a healthcare system that just treats symptoms to a wellness understanding where we use cannabis to enable our endocannabinoid system to be in homeostasis and allow our body to work correctly and our immune system to deal with everything that it needs to deal with, because it can if we do it right. So I think that's my cannabis sermon. But yeah, that's my guilty pleasure.
Amen. Do you have a favorite cannabis strain, and where do you prefer to go snowboarding?
Well, my home mountain is Breckenridge. It's where I learned, and it's where I broke my arm and gave myself a concussion. But I also like the back bowls at Vail are very special. And I enjoy going to Beaver Creek. The Beaver Creek has everything you need if you know where to go, and I do. So, and Keystone is fun too. Obviously, I'm an Epic guy. But I love to go to Heavenly is wonderful, and Whistler is also very special. So those are a couple of places that I like as well outside of Colorado.
Okay. Right on.
How often
How
you
about
getting out in the winter?
Well, I like to do 30 days a year, but the last few years that's been impossible. So, and I'm going to have to work my way back up to it, but I'm ready to go. And so maybe next week is going to be my first time up, and I'll probably go, I'm not sure, whoever's got the best base.
All right. Well, be safe out there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. After I had a really bad accident in 2008 because I thought I was better than I was. And so I broke my ulna. I gave myself a concussion, and I got a lot smarter. So now I always ride under control, and I actually wear upper body armor that BMX riders use, and I have padded pants.
Okay.
It helps.
Yeah, definitely.
And always wear a helmet. If I hadn't had a helmet on when I had my accident, I'd be dead. Period.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for the information. Glad I ran into you at Natty G's. Hope to run into you around the neighborhood. So,
yeah, we need to get together and discuss production.
Yes, absolutely. I would really appreciate that.
Very good. Well, let me know when this is on so I can spread it far and wide.
I was just gonna say, Dave, I definitely would love to get you back on and talk about the meditation and the grounding and some of those other things that we're into. We talk about with some of our other guests, and now knowing that you're into those and you have a practice like that and you're close by, we definitely love to have you back on and chat.
It'd be an honor.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you, sir. Have a good night.
See y'all later.
Take care, Dan.